Hello, my friend. On today's episode, I'm back with Mark Fisher, and we're talking about a hard truth when it comes to your gym's marketing, which is you're probably doing too much and not enough of what actually works. So, in this episode, we're going to break down why more variety isn't always better, how to figure out what's really producing leads from your marketing, and how to double down on those strategies that actually move the needle forward. So, if you've ever felt like you're just throwing spaghetti against the wall and nothing's sticking, or you're overwhelmed by the sheer number of marketing tasks on your plate, this episode is going to be helpful for you to simplify and focus. And before I dive in, I want to just give you a quick shout out over to our YouTube channel. We have got tons of fantastic videos packed with actionable, practical advice to help you run and grow your gym. So hit the link in the show notes, head over to YouTube, and be sure to subscribe and tap that bell so you never miss a video. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. I'm here with Mr. Fisher today. How are you, sir?
I am gloomy. It's raining.
I know we were both lamenting about that before we recorded. We're in New York, and it's just been like kind of gloomy and raining, and it does take a toll. It takes a toll on the energy for sure.
Yes, sure does.
So I'm trying to climb out of it. Luckily, it does not affect my dog Pippin. He is unaffected by the weather,
Yes.
and so he's got energy all day long. So I'm trying to get a little bit of his energy.
Yes.
Well, let's dive into today's topic. And today's topic is really maybe just kind of like one key message, but maybe we'll spend some time pulling it apart. And so the key message we wanted to talk about today is that many of you in your marketing are just doing too damn much, and you'd really benefit from doing less better. And while that may not be a revolutionary idea, I think it's one that's kind of hard to action on, right? It feels hard to know what to stop doing, what to spend more time on, what does better look like. So Fisher, kind of talk me through what made this kind of observation salient for you.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I have the good fortune of talking to a lot of gym owners, as I know you do, and often they want to talk to me about marketing, which I'm always happy to do. And it is also clear to me, and this I think partly came out of me preparing for, I should note, depending when this goes live, maybe there'll be a show note for it, but I'm doing a free webinar with our friends at Perform Better on what is working now in 2025 for the best gyms to generate more leads. And anybody that has read, hopefully by now you already have, my 30-minute less than 30-minute read of a book, the little book of gym marketing secrets, you will note there's not an unlimited number of things you can do. However, there's more than two. And I'm not suggesting you literally do two, but sometimes when I talk to a gym owner, it's clear they're doing nothing. So we need to start there. We need to do something. And then sometimes they're doing something, but they're doing just such a small amount of it that, of course, they're not getting results. They just need to do a bigger volume of marketing activities. But sometimes, and more commonly, this is with more advanced operators who are very dialed in on systems, that are very disciplined, that do things consistently, that build out a team and start putting a lot of firepower and capacity behind marketing activities. Sometimes I actually find they're doing too many things, and they maybe have 10 different sources of leads. But if you were to really analyze the number of qualified leads they're getting per source, you might find that as many 7 to 8 of them give them 0 to 2 leads per month. And in that situation, depending on how much time and energy they are doing on some of these more fringe strategies, they'd actually be better just stop doing most of what they're doing and then look at the maybe 2 to 3 strategies that are really bearing fruit and just do 2 to 5 times as much of that, right? And, we can dig more into like what specific strategies I think, are going to be the first arrows I pull from the quiver. But I think that's the takeaway for people listening is don't keep doing more. Or maybe I should say, don't just keep doing a larger variety of things. Just find out what's working and then just do a lot more of that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The way this often sounds in conversations with some of our Unicorn Side members is they'll get on a call and they'll say, you know what, my marketing's not working. I'm just not getting enough leads. And we'll say, oh, let's walk through what you're doing. Show me your plan, where your leads coming from. Let's look at your dashboards. And they'll go through just a giant laundry list of all the things they're doing. And what we'll come to the realization of is exactly this, that like 80% of the results are coming from 10% of their efforts. And they get this overall impression that none of it's working, when the reality is, is they're putting all this effort into most of the things that are not working, not putting enough effort into the one or two things that are actually working. And so it can feel like none of it works. And they feel like I'm throwing speed against the wall and none of it's sticking. And I tried all these things. Maybe I'm just bad at this. And they can really spiral out when they feel like none of it's working. But it's really looking back at the data and the metrics. And this is a perfect example of feelings versus facts, is that it feels like to most of them, like it's just none of it's working. But the facts actually show that these one or two strategies are actually crushing it percentage wise. You just haven't put enough time, energy, money, resources into them for them to really pay off in a way that feels good. And so I think it's a good example of why we talk so much about tracking the facts and the metrics, is because it helps you parse out moments like this where it feels like all is lost, but the reality is it's like, oh wait, there's actually hope in here. Look what the
Yeah.
numbers say. Yeah.
Yeah. And admittedly, sometimes, to be fair, I think there's two versions of this. And the one that is easier to solve and I like better is when you are collectively spending truly 40 to 50 hours per week across you and maybe two other team members that are helping out. And you are getting a sufficient amount of lead quality, but you're just wasting a lot of time because a lot of it's actually not bearing
Yeah.
fruit.
Yep.
I think the other version is when you are, this is probably more common, a one human band,
Yeah.
and you're responsible for marketing alone, and you're actually killing yourself to put in a solid 15 hours. But when you actually look at it, it's still, there's actually like not enough time for any one strategy to bear fruit.
Yeah.
Further, some strategies are, I don't want to call it like a lottery ticket. I need to find a better metaphor for this. ChatGPT would help me. But business partnerships, I think, are the ultimate example of there's a little bit of randomness in there, right? So as an example, let me operationalize this for you, what this might look like. So my gym in New Jersey, we do paid ads. Okay. So we do paid ads, which I think most mature gyms, they're not at a wait list, probably want to do. And while it doesn't work in every market, it does work in our market. So a large percentage of our leads are from the paid ads, but you can't rely on them alone because you're going to get higher volume and they don't require a lot of time if you're working with a good ad vendor like our friends Gym Member Machine. But you need to supplement that with some sort of organic lead strategy. And organic leads generally to generate new leads. So usually going to be some referral plays, which are great, but admittedly work better the more people you have. And you can't go to that well. Well, I should say you can go to that well every single week. You can't go with every client every single week to that well.
Sure.
But then you look at business partnerships, and business partnerships are very weird. And for a long time, I always felt stupid when people talked about business partnerships because at Mark Fisher Fitness, we just never had a lot of success with them. And I don't know if it was like our gym was weird or if New York City is a weird market. I actually think in retrospect, a lot of it was we just didn't spend, frankly, enough time and did enough total volume. And we did hit jackpot with one of our partners. It happened to be a nonprofit, right? Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, particularly in the early days, drove like a lot of actual leads and a lot of members for us.
Yeah.
But in my experience, when we opened up the Alloy in New Jersey, we just weren't doing enough big enough volume. And because you only, I think, land maybe 1 out of 20, 25 business partners play ball, it is a little bit of a high risk, high return strategy because it's going to be time intensive. You have to get good at the reps of learning how you approach these other businesses. You have to create the lists of the businesses. You have to often physically go there and call and email. And you might talk to 50 businesses and truly get nowhere. It might take you like 4 months of 5 hours per week and get nothing. But it might be the fourth business you talk to is down to play ball and they really understand marketing and they want to start cross promoting with you and you start driving leads for each other immediately. So at any rate, I think that's why it's like hard to make this fit exactly into an algorithm because I think there's going to be an element of luck with some of these strategies that you can't completely control for. But I do think it's worth at least being clear-eyed around the way this might look like so you can decide how to allocate your time and energy and money.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the rate limiting factor that we've mentioned a few times that I want to just call out explicitly, which is all of this decision making is centered on the pure fact that most of you listening are a very small team, if not a one-person band, and your time, attention, and resources are limited. Right? Listen, if you are a giant corporation, and you had
Yep.
multiple avatars and tons of time and money and resources to go after them in multiple ways, you can afford to run a lot of experiments that don't work out. You can
Yep.
afford to
Yep.
run a lot of experiments that just trickle in some leads from time to time because you have so much capacity. But for all of you listening, you have very little capacity, very little time, energy, and money, which just means how you spend it really has to be scrutinized. And you have to reflect on what's
Yep.
working and not
Yep.
working on a regular basis because it is so limited. Even when we talk about dollars spent, right? We recommend you spend only like a single digit percentage of your revenue every month on marketing. This is not a ton of money to go around. And so you think about how every dollar spent, how every minute of your time is spent, all of those decisions really matter. And so I think, it goes down to, just because you can do that fill in the blank marketing approach doesn't mean you should, right? You really want to think about what's the best, most effective use of your time, money, and resources, because, not all of them are going to be. And as you
Yep.
mentioned, Fisher, not all of them have the same, risk and reward profile. Things like business partnerships, events, community grassroots things, right? They're all can be so valuable when they hit, and they don't have, kind of quote unquote kind of guaranteed return as something that's kind of more structured and
Yeah.
predictable as paid ads. Even though there's lots of variation, it's still, a little bit more predictable. You pay for some good ads that are well placed,
Yep.
you're probably going to meet some strangers.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey there, Business Unicorns podcast listeners. I'm just making absolutely sure you have already gotten your free, instantly downloadable copy of my new book, The Little Book of Gym Marketing Secrets. You can find a link to download it in the show notes, or you can go to gymmarketingsecretsbook.com. I worked super hard to make sure this is a less than a 30-minute read and is a comprehensive overview of all the things you need to do to grow your gym, get more leads, more clients, and importantly, change more lives. Again, find the link in the show notes where you can download your free copy at gymmarketingsecretsbook.com. And now back to the podcast.
And so let me just ask you this. So when people are deciding, we mentioned a few strategies already, but just to put a fine point on it, when people are getting a sense of maybe I am spread a little too thin, maybe I am doing a few too many things, and maybe they're not all paying off, what do you recommend for how they go in and kind of make the decision about what to cut
Yeah.
and what to do?
The hard part is when you are looking to clarify what's actually working or not, it does require a little more tracking, which is annoying.
Yep.
So what we do at our gym in New Jersey is we have a spreadsheet, and you can do this a few different ways. You could track where every prospect comes from. You could track where every new member comes from. We've arbitrarily set the line of we track where all new sales conversations start from.
Yep.
Right. And that gives us a larger data set than just new members, but it's less tracking than tracking all leads individually. Yeah. Now, I would note if you're working with a company that uses Go High Level, which we have a white labeled version of it in our gym, it does allow you to track lead source. The only thing on my top level dashboard I do like to split out is paid leads versus unpaid leads, because those are the two big buckets. But it's worth knowing when we're talking about how we might allocate time differently, we're trying to understand often which of our various organic non-paid strategies are bearing fruit, right? Because the paid is going to be kind of always easy to bracket and sort of see clearly how many leads you're getting from it. So we have a tab in our master dashboard, very simple, that we track every sales conversation that is scheduled. We track what happened, right? Did they no-show? Did they reschedule? Did they sign up for a membership? Or did they fail to convert? Did they say no? And then right next to it, we are tracking what is the lead source, right? And it's interesting, I'll tell you, a lot of the leads, for us are going to be, I wouldn't say a lot, but a fair bit, honestly, are drive-by.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can't really control that. That's, there's a case to be made that I was talking to another dear friend and smart gym owner lately that sometimes you can actually be willing to spend a little bit more for rent because it reduces your marketing costs, because if you're in such a location, it's going to help a lot of drive-by traffic. And this particular location happens to be the end cap on a strip mall. So that actually is a very big piece of how we get starting point sessions. But anyway, all that to say, I think if you're not tracking either lead source or at least where new members get from, or my personal preference is probably how many the sources of sales conversations or sources of low bear offers sold, you don't have the information. So you need to start tracking at least that. And I know it's annoying and there's only so many hours, but hopefully if you have a dedicated sales conversation anyway, here's the thing I like about it. It's pretty easy and you're likely naturally going to be asking, how did you hear about us as part of that, right? So hopefully it's not that onerous and you're not even doing anything new. You just have to make sure that you and or if there's somebody on your team doing it, just get in the habit of tracking it. Because the other thing too is you do need probably like at least a month, maybe 3 months of data to really understand this.
Yeah.
But then at that point, you should be able to look back and be like, oh, I have gotten literally no leads from X lead source. We're just going to stop doing that altogether.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that it really, there are other ways to think about this, but I think the most effective way is just to do the tracking, over long term, to see what the data says. And I love the distinction of doing it right at the sales conversation.
Yep.
So even if you don't have the tools or resources to know where people came from at the moment of becoming a lead, at the very least, when you start to talk to them and you can ask them, how'd you hear about us? That's a great moment to start tracking. So at the very least, people who are the warmest leads that actually engage in a conversation, you get to know, where did they come from?
Yep.
And then I'll tell you almost everything you need to know about where to spend your energy and efforts. I think the other thing I'll say, and I know this maybe this is fodder for a whole nother podcast, but another consideration here, and I don't want to put too much emphasis on it, but is another thing consideration for what to spend your time and energy doing is on some level what you like doing. Right. On some level, right? In some cases, you're going to have to just kind of eat the frog and just do the shitty marketing thing you don't like doing because it really works, right? But in some cases, if there's something you really don't like doing, starting with that thing is the real mistake, right? Finding some pieces of it. For example, Fisher, you've always liked writing, right? Or at least have learned to like writing, right? And so email marketing has always been one of our go-to things. We've never taken our foot off the gas when it comes to email marketing at MFF or Business of Unicorns, in part because you like it. No, you happen to be really great at it and have gotten way even better at it than you usually started, but you liked writing. And so I think, same thing with Business of Unicorns. I know I don't like writing or doing much else in marketing. So I do this podcast as my way of contributing. Right. And so part of the reason we do the things we do is because we like them. And we do plenty of things we don't like doing because we have to, or we've gotten to the point where we can hire other people to. But I think it's part of the equation because I see so many gym owners just struggling to do any marketing because they have not found anything that they like so far. And I think that's a real issue. If you really are beating yourself up every day to do some tasks that you hate doing, I think it's going to be a real obstacle for many of you. You have to find a way to do something you love or to find the people who will do it instead of you. But kicking and screaming, doing a task that makes you grit your teeth and hate your life is not a winning strategy for anyone.
Yes, we can provide some allowance for that from a behavior change perspective, certainly.
Yeah. Well, let's leave it there. I think that this is a pithy bit of advice we're offering on today's podcast, which is take a look at all the things you're doing in marketing. You might be doing too much. You might benefit from doing less of it, just better. And your metrics will mainly tell you what those things are. So if you're not tracking, this is a call to action to start tracking those things. Mark laid out perfectly, I think, a great system for doing that. And hopefully it'll save you some time, money, and energy in generating leads more effectively with less stress. That's the goal. Awesome. Well, thanks for a great conversation, Fisher.
Thank you.
I'll see you on the next one.
Bye.